welcome back to the 2017 Pokemon Dallas Regional Championships. My name is Gabby Snyder.
My name is Adam Dorricott.
And today we're bringing you round 5 of this tournament, and I think it's going to be a very exciting matchup we have here. Carson Confer versus Enosh Shachar.
Yeah, it's been an exciting one. Both players with a pretty good history behind them, of course. Carson,
very good history behind them.
Winning a world championship last year, probably a pretty good pedigree of player. But Enosh, we saw in San Jose, he's had his time in the seniors division many years ago now. Had good runs there, not quite as good as Carson's in his time as the seniors. But now he has to play somebody, Enosh, who's been in Masters for a while, knows it's a slightly different ball game, and is obviously having a really good time in this new format.
Definitely. For those of you who may have not watched the San Jose Regional Championships a couple weeks back, Enosh actually went undefeated in Swiss. In fact, the only loss that he took throughout the entirety of the tournament was that last round versus Gavin Michaels. So certainly a force to be contended with in this metagame. Having a record like that was just absolutely incredible and a thrill to watch.
Yeah, he played really well every single round I saw him on stream. I've had a chat with him. He's very confident and very comfortable in this metagame. It's something he's very well adapted to. Be interested to see if Carson, of course, winning a Worlds in a certain format, playing in a new one, and migrating up a division is a pretty tough time for him all around. So going against a player against Enosh at 4-0, it's going to be a challenge for him, but he's definitely the kind of player that can pull it out when he needs to.
Yeah, and you know, if he is able to pull out a win here today, it'll certainly be a great help for him moving forward in this tournament as these trainers enter team preview. Carson is running Marowak, Porygon Z, Araquanid, Tapu Koko, Kartana, and Crocodile versus Enosh's team of Trevenant, Smeargle, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak. So a little bit of similar teams here. I see a lot of Marowak, I see a lot of Araquanid, and interestingly enough, I see a lot of Crocodile.
Yeah, both players carrying that Crocodile. Obviously both big fans of it, and I think we've seen it a few times today, really used to good effect, so it's definitely something to watch out for. Carson, we're having a chat before the game, says he was heavily inspired by Enosh's team, so that's definitely already a slight tick in Enosh's favour that he's going to know how this plays, at least the core of it, and Carson's going to have to hope he's got his own spin on it enough to be able to pull it out against Enosh. Of course, Enosh not sticking with that same team, making a couple of changes, mainly that Trevenant, going to be something completely different that he wants, but if it does what he needs to, if he saw the one weakness in his team, that being the hard Trick Room of Gavin Michaels, of course, in the finals, Trevenant's a pretty good answer. It sets Trick Room itself, it can reverse it as well, so I think that change might just be as a result of San Jose, but the rest of it, he's still exceptionally comfortable with.
Yes, and these trainers are ready and raring to go. I'm very excited to see what these two are going to lead. Part of me kind of hopes we see that Smeargle come out on Enosh's side of the field, but Tapu Koko and Kartana sent out from Carson, and Enosh sticking with the Tapu Fini that did him so well a couple weeks ago in San Jose, but this time pairing it with a Celesteela, interestingly enough.
No, very, I think, safe and defensive lead from Enosh. We've talked a lot today about player styles and teams adapting to that player style, and we see a very defensive lead from him, which is something he's been renowned for in the past. Carson, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Tapu Koko and Kartana, both very fast and very offensive. The Tapu Koko putting great pressure, of course, on both Pokemon on Enosh's side of the field, losing out a little bit by not having the terrain of choice up, not getting the boost from electric terrain, but it's still going to be able to throw Thunderbolts at things. Of course, there are options for switches. The Crocodile in the back may be a good switch. The Marowak as well, as we saw in the previous round. Those two really nullify the threat of electric type, so you can quite boldly lead these two and then make those right switches around to get in a really good position.
We see Kartana switch out on Carson's side of the field, that Araquanid coming in its place, Tapu Fini switching out as well into the Marowak, so a great defensive switch there, that Marowak utilizing its Lightning Rod ability right off the bat to absorb that Thunderbolt and boost its special attack stat. We see Celesteela go for a Flamethrower onto the Araquanid, so a really interesting tech choice there. Unfortunately, it doesn't deal a lot of damage, but had that been a Kartana, that would have been a very different story.
It would have been, and a lot of board positioning coming in on this time. Obviously, very minimal damage done. Of course, Araquanid, normal effective damage coming out from that fire move, but Water Bubble, the ability that's made it so popular, really helping it out there. So a nice bit of board positioning, I think slightly more from Enosh's side of the field.
We see both Marowak on Enosh's side of the field and Araquanid on Carson's side of the field protect this turn. We see that Tapu Koko use Discharge, so circumventing the Lightning Rod ability on that Marowak, targeting down that Celesteela. It brings it down to about half health, and Tapu Koko takes recoil from its Life Orb hold item. Leech Seed from Celesteela into the protecting Araquanid, but we do see Celesteela reveal its hold item, and it is indeed holding that Leftovers item that it loves so much.
So that turn looked a little bit treacherous for Carson, of course. We saw Thunderbolt on turn 1 out of Tapu Koko, and not everyone is running both Thunderbolt and Discharge. So having that option available is very good for him. Means he is still able to get some damage out, and a Smart Protect means Enosh doesn't actually accomplish anything in that turn. I think this game is still very finely tuned, just hanging in the balance. And I think if Carson can keep getting Discharges up and perhaps find a way to put pressure on the Marowak as well, it's going to be good. The Araquanid is a good way to put pressure on it, but it can't stay in there while Tapu Koko is trying to discharge.
Tapu Koko switching out this turn, the Porygon 2 coming out into play, getting an attack boost from its download ability. Heavy Slam from that Celesteela into the Araquanid, but it hardly does any damage at all. Marowak uses its Shadow Bone, also targeting that Araquanid, going for a knockout, but it misses it just barely and lowers Araquanid's defense, but it also activates Araquanid's held item, which is an Iapapa Berry, and Araquanid using Liquidation, which is a move that it's sort of its signature move, I believe, for this generation to knock out that Marowak.
It really is, and with the use of Water Bubble, it's just doing so much damage. So Carson actually clearing the field of a really big threat to his team. Now when he brings Tapu Koko in, he's free to start Thunderbolting again. He doesn't have to make the protect plays going around to get the discharges off, of course. So a very good turn for Carson. Got the Porygon 2 in for absolutely free, so maybe able to set up something there, maybe able to get a Trick Room up to assist this Araquanid. And Enosh actually not capitalizing on a chance to set up Leech Seed and get even more health back on that Celesteela. So Enosh played it quite safe, tried to just go for the knockout with pure damage, missed it, gave Carson that berry, which is exceptionally important, means that Araquanid is looking pretty healthy again. And then, of course, now Crocodile's still under threat from Araquanid.
Crocodile is still under threat, and that Porygon 2 is essentially given a free turn here to do whatever it wants, provided that Enosh doesn't have some sort of interesting tech on that Crocodile to stop it. We see the Araquanid switch out, the Kartana coming in its place to take a crunch from that Crocodile, followed up by a Leech Seed from the Celesteela into the Porygon 2, and Porygon 2 left to use Thunderbolt against the Celesteela. It does not deal enough for a knockout, but it does a pretty sizable amount, all things considered.
It does, and I think it's a smart switch. It looks like Araquanid's in a really good position to do something, but we do know, of course, that it's been intimidated, so it's nice to get it out. He manages to get Kartana, which won't take too much damage from the crunch, and I think he was hoping Enosh would Leech Seed into that slot, which we'd seen before. So interesting switch from Carson. Doesn't quite achieve as much as he'd like, and obviously that Celesteela does get a Leech Seed down on Porygon, so the pressure is on to try and get the knockout on it as soon as possible. There is, of course, the Tapu Koko in the back, and this Kartana putting the pressure on the Crocodile in the same way the Araquanid was. So Carson just pivoting a little bit, just wants to reassess the board and just try and keep on trucking as he is. So I'd be interested to see if he can keep up this pace.
We see Carson switch out that Kartana and send Tapu Koko into the field in its place. That Electric Surge activating the electric terrain, getting rid of the misty terrain, and boosting Porygon 2's Thunderbolt attack. If it decides to use that this turn, we see Tapu Fini, though, switch in for the Crocodile and bring back the Misty Terrain. So a great read there from Enosh. Heavy Slam into the Tapu Koko. Will it be enough to knock it out? Unfortunately, it is not. Thunderbolt from that Porygon 2 into the Celesteela, and Celesteela hangs on.
Oh, that's so smart from Enosh to switch in the Tapu Fini there, knowing obviously how much the Thunderbolt did before with the electric terrain up. He manages to nullify some of that damage, take that damage down, and that means Celesteela is still around. But looking at the 3 Pokemon Enosh has remaining, he's relying a lot on this Crocodile. We've seen Tapu Koko has Discharge, so if it can get it off on the 2 Pokemon Enosh currently has on the field, he's going to be doing a lot of damage. If he can perhaps switch around a little bit, get Tapu Koku's Electric Terrain back up, he's going to be in a fantastic position here. So I think Carson still has a slight upper hand, but we've seen Enosh knows how to switch around, knows how to play this team exceptionally well.
Carson switching out that Porygon 2 into his Kartana. Tapu Koko protecting this turn. So Celesteela protecting as well. So Tapu Fini has a great opportunity here to set something up. Instead, we see it go for a Muddy Water, which will make contact with that Kartana. It is yet to be seen how much damage that'll deal and whether or not it'll get the accuracy drop should Kartana survive. It does survive, however, we do not see that accuracy drop.
No, and I think missing the knockout on that Kartana could be a bit of a problem. Of course, Kartana switching in, so if it has that ability to protect, now would be a really good time. We do see, though, some Kartanas not able to do that, some of them using particularly choice items, or even assault vests in rare cases. So I think Carson just wants to set up a nice situation where he can discharge. Potentially he was bringing in the Kartana to get it knocked out and bring something else in, and obviously keep Porygon nice and safe, but Enosh not capitalizing on a turn where he could be setting up with Tapu Fini. We have seen him use Tapu Fini with a lot of setup, you know, maybe he's moved away from that, but before that was his go-to. Be interested to see if he's using exactly the same again, and if that's the way to go with it.
Celesteela switching out on Enosh's side of the field, that Crocodile taking the field in its place, looking to intimidate that Kartana and most likely that Tapu Koko as well, possibly also looking to absorb that Thunderbolt if Tapu Koko should target it. Leaf Blade into the Tapu Fini. It's super effective and it gets a critical hit. So that Intimidate not working out for Enosh there. Kartana getting that +1 attack boost from its Beast Boost ability. Thunderbolt though does go into the Crocodile and will not deal any damage.
No, I think Carson's just got himself in a winning position as well. Of course, Kartana coming in does more than just buy him some time, you know, give him an option. It really lets him put another set of pressure on the Tapu Fini. The critical hit definitely helps. Leaf Blade, of course, with that increased chance to score the critical hit. But when you get them when you need them, it really, really helps. So Enosh, I think, definitely in a sticky situation. The Beast Boost making the Intimidate null and void, so Kartana still in a really good position to attack this Crocodile.
Leaf Blade into the Crocodile, and it gets another knockout. Crocodile, unfortunately, unable to deal any damage this turn. Kartana getting a second Beast Boost, and given the fact that it's down to just that Celesteela versus all 4 of Carson's Pokemon, I believe this will be game over for Enosh, unless that Celesteela might have something tricky up its sleeve.
We have seen Celesteela pull back some really tough matches, but with the amount of Pokemon Carson has left remaining, I just can't see it. So Enosh actually going down a game to a team that's exceptionally similar to his. That means he is going to know how to adapt going into games 2 and 3 with it, but that's got to give Carson a lot of confidence, and I think the switches he made, some of the predicts he made as well, were really on point. I love some of the switches, especially the Kartana into the crunch, and when Kartana came back in later as well, every time Kartana hit the field, it was there to serve a purpose as he moved on throughout the game. So that's been doing a lot of work for Carson.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and Carson showing why he's a world champion. Being able to play at such a high level, even though he just got out of the senior division, is huge, I think, in showing and sort of predicting how the rest of the season is going to go for him. Whether or not he can sort of adapt to Enosh adapting to that game, I think we've seen Enosh sort of take information gathered from past games and just use it to absolutely pummel his opponent, to steal a word from one of the Z moves we've seen today.
Would you say it was an all-out pummeling in games 2 and 3? Or?
I would say that Enosh definitely has the capability for an all-out pummeling in games 2 and 3. But given how well Carson and how smartly Carson played the first game, it's going to be an interesting matchup. And both these trainers really need to think about both how do they adapt and how they think their opponent will adapt to how they think their opponent thinks they are going to adapt.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
There are lots of mind games.
There's a ton of mind games being played. We are, of course, back in team preview for game number 2. We'll have a quick rundown of the teams again. On Enosh's side, the Trevenant, the Smiggle, which we didn't see, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak, while Carson using a variant of Enosh's team from San Jose, Marowak, Porygon 2, Araquanid, Tapu Koku, Kartana, and Crocodile. So a lot of similarities, but it feels like the way that Carson trained and played his team in that game just gave him a slight edge.
Definitely. And Carson, you know, it looks like he selected his team very quickly while Enosh is taking a little bit more time, which makes me think that Carson is feeling very confident going into this next game. I mean, he already won 1 against Enosh. Certainly, it seems like he had plenty of options and plenty of opportunities for his team to sort of even can have a little bit more wiggle room. And I mean, he did 4-0 Enosh. So
Yeah, taking a 4-0 win against Enosh is a really big deal. There's not many people that can do that. Of course, in his run in San Jose, he barely dropped a game all day. Not just winning matches, barely dropping games. So he's a really tough player. I know he's capable of the bounce back, but if Carson just makes the same kind of calls he did in game 1, picks the correct 4 for the 4 that Enosh brings, he's going to be in really good shape to show that he's leveled up to the Masters division. He's in a really good position to go and take it back to the World Championship.
And Carson leads this game with the combination of Tapu Koko and Crocodile versus Enosh's Celesteela and Smeargle, which is an old familiar face, I think, to a lot of people in the video game championships circuit.
It's been around a lot, and it got a lot of notoriety last year. Of course, losing one of its big assets, it was able to sketch Dark Void, and that would be able to put both Pokemon to sleep. Fortunately, I believe, it doesn't have that anymore. It has to resort to other sleep moves such as Spore, but being able to put things to sleep, still very important. It's changed up its bag of tricks. We've not seen it as much this year, but I know there are tricks up its sleeve that it can really pull out.
And Carson possibly making a great read against that just in team preview, sending out its Tapu Koko to get that electric terrain to keep Pokemon awake. And even if Enosh were to switch his own Tapu, his Tapu Fini, onto the field, that would bring up Misty terrain, which would still not allow that Smeargle to put any Pokemon to sleep. So it looks like everybody is wired and raring to go. We see that Crocodile switch in for the Celesteela on Enosh's side of the field. Smeargle using Fake Out onto the Tapu Koko, and Crocodile on Carson's side of the field targeting Enosh's Crocodile with a crunch of its own.
Yeah, nice safe play, I think. Enosh not giving away too much, barely any damage switched around between the two, so just the same kind of thing we saw in turn 1 of the last game. A lot about the board position, getting the things on the field that they want for the follow-up. Of course, Smeargle has pretty much any move it wants, and now it's used that Fake Out. It may be able to do a lot more. I think it's still popular to use Follow Me with it, really direct attention away, but the threat of spread moves from both sides of the field mean that's not going to be ideal at all. So definitely up to Carson, I think, to make the read here.
Carson switching out his Tapu Koko and sending in the Araquanid in its place. Araquanid certainly going to resist a lot of Crocodile's attacks. We see Smeargle switch out as well, and the Celesteela take the field again in its place. And here is a Z move. It looks like it is the Groundium Z on the Crocodile.
It is going to be the Tectonic Rage coming out of the Crocodile. It is going to be doing a lot of damage. We have seen both the Dark type and the Ground type Z move coming out on the Crocodiles so far, and just driving it into the center of the earth, looking to try and get rid of it.
Up in an explosion of magma. Enosh's Crocodile knocking out Carson's Crocodile. So that could have been a speed tie. That might be an indication of how these Crocodiles are trained. But definitely a great play by Enosh, able to secure himself a 1 Pokemon lead where, you know, in the last game we didn't see any leads at all from him. So he must be feeling good going into this next turn.
Yeah, I like the switch up to use the Groundium Z in this game. You know, he knows that it does a huge amount of damage, truly preposterous amounts of damage with that Groundium Z. And that's what he needs. If he can get the lead, I think he's in a better position, because the way Carson played game 1 involved a lot of smart switching. It's tougher to switch with just 3 Pokemon. So Enosh may be getting the benefit of the doubt, you know, winning that speed tie, just really trucking on with that huge Groundium Z. Unfortunately, now Crocodile is under pressure from the Araquanid, and Celesteela under pressure from the Tapu Koko. So Carson has the cards in hand to definitely quickly swing momentum back his way.
Interestingly enough, we see Tapu Koko protect this turn, Celesteela protecting as well. So if that Crocodile were to target that Tapu Koko, it would be unfortunate, but that Crocodile uses Earthquake, so that Araquanid will take some damage from that attack. However, it's not going to be nearly enough for any kind of KO. That Araquanid is just so bulky, and it fires back a super powered liquidation into the Crocodile for the knockout.
Very good play from Carson there. I love what he did. Slight misplay, I believe, on Enosh's part. What he could have done there, Celesteela did not need to protect. So it could have got a Leech Seed down, it could have maybe heavy slammed for a bit of damage on something. But playing it safe, obviously scared of something from the Tapu Koko, probably the Thunderbolt, because he doesn't have all the Pokemon he needs now to really answer that. So Enosh playing a little bit too safe, and Carson, knowing Araquanid's not under threat from Earthquake, Enosh just trying to get damage on the Tapu Koko into the very smart protect from Carson means Araquanid just picks up an easy knockout and a really nice position from Enosh. Of course, he gets Smeargle back in.
Smeargle faking out that Tapu Koko once again. It also takes a heavy slam from the Celesteela, but it hangs on. That Araquanid uses Liquidation against the Celesteela and does a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, doing that much to a Celesteela is absolutely massive. It's going to be
enormous.
It's really tough to just lose that much health on your Celesteela every single turn. It likes to take a little bit of damage, get Leech Seeds out, recover it up with leftovers and protect. And doing that much is really, really good. We didn't see anything go down on the Smeargle, and I believe this year, if people bring Smeargle, they likely bring a Focus Sash variant, so it would have been nice to get some damage down and break that Focus Sash. So I think Carson, not too worried about it. That damage on Celesteela is very important. But with 3 Pokemon apiece, Tapu Koko heavily damaged, of course, Celesteela able to protect this turn. Could be a tough one, I think, for Carson. Could be a tough one for Enosh. This next turn looks to be absolutely crucial, if you ask me.
Yes, this next turn is huge, and Celesteela starts it off with a Protect, so it won't take any damage from the Thunderbolt that Tapu Koko fires off. Smeargle using Endeavor against that Araquanid. It lowers its HP a little bit because that Smeargle is still at full health, but that might be a great indication that Smeargle is holding that Focus Sash item, allowing it to hang on from that attack from the Araquanid.
Having Smeargle on the field for one more turn is going to be huge for Enosh. Of course, a slight misplay by Carson this turn, throwing the Thunderbolt into the Protect, where in a previous turn we saw him correctly call the Protect and protect his own Tapu Koko. So, very small misplays by each player, and I don't think either player's managed to successfully capitalize on it. Of course, that's Smeargle. We've seen it Endeavor. It's not going to do any more to Araquanid, so now it's got to look in for another trick in its box of tricks. It will be able to access Spore if it wants. There is no terrain out on the field right now, but it's not going to be doing any of that. It's actually just going to switch out.
Marowak switching in for that Smeargle, and we see Araquanid go for a Protect, which means we might be seeing the Discharge from that Tapu Koko, which is a great play. It will not deal any damage to that Marowak, but it will be able to successfully target that Celesteela, and without that electric terrain though, it just barely misses the knockout. Tapu Koko taking some recoil damage from its Life Orb and Flamethrower into the Tapu Koko for the knockout.
We see in that turn just how important it is to keep your terrain in play. When it's essential to your team, you want to keep it in play, and missing out on that extra damage from Carson's side of the field means Celesteela manages to get the knockout in return and really get Enosh back, I think, just a slight step ahead. Very smart switch from Enosh, knowing that the Thunderbolt was a issue, brings in Marowak to try and get Lightning Rod. But even one step ahead of that, beautiful prediction by Carson to throw out Discharge and protect Araquanid. So I like that play a lot from Carson, but I still feel that Enosh just kind of had the answer to it because he knew the terrain wasn't up, and that was definitely one thing that would give him a little bit of respite in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised, honestly, that Carson didn't use that Discharge maybe a turn or two sooner. It would have still benefited from the electric terrain at that point, but, you know, Carson's still in a pretty great position. The Sacred Sword targeting that Celesteela who just protected. Marowak with the Flare Blitz going to deal a huge amount of damage to that Kartana, but it is enough to knock it out. We do not see a Focus Sash item on that Kartana, so that's great information for Enosh moving forward. Araquanid with that Liquidation, though, targeting the Marowak and most definitely knocking it out.
That is an easy knockout for Araquanid, but it is now Araquanid, the interesting water bubble spider, against the world, of course. Celesteela may be able to buy some time. It would love to set up a Leech Seed, I'm sure, but looking at, of course, the amount of damage Araquanid did with Liquidation earlier in the game, not going to be so easy. Might be a little bit easier now, though, with Smeargle to help out. We have seen earlier in the game Smeargle moving before Araquanid, which means if it does have Spore available to it, then it's going to be able to get it to sleep, which allows Celesteela some time to get back in the game. So will a Fake Out.
We see Smeargle fake out the Araquanid. Celesteela using Leech Seed, targeting that Araquanid to heal even more of its health. It looks like it might come down to a heavy slam here versus that Araquanid. I'm not sure if Enosh wants to reveal quite yet whether or not he has that Spore moving forward, especially since It looks like this game may lean in his favor. We might see him use something like a follow me perhaps, or some other form of misdirection. You know, knowing that I think knowing that my opponent has Spore moving forward into a Game 3 situation would be a lot more valuable than knowing whether or not their Smeargle had something like Follow Me. But hey, we see the Spore putting that Araquanid to sleep. Enosh playing it super safe, knowing his win conditions, targeting that Araquanid with a heavy slam. Is it enough to squish the spider? It is not.
Not quite.
Araquanid hanging on, consuming its Ayapapa berry, I believe we saw, and yeah, this game is still going to go on.
It looked like he was really close to the win there, Enosh. But of course, the Papa Berry, bringing it back to such a huge amount of health. Good thing for Celesteela, though, that health is, of course, going to be able to be sucked away with Leech Seed, so definitely going to be buying some time for himself there. We did see on Enosh's Celesteela one interesting thing. A lot of players, particularly at the beginning of the season, put Substitute on it. So now would be a great time to set up a Substitute, but with Enosh taking Flamethrower, he sacrificed that Substitute, and if we get an early wake up from Araquanid, maybe it gets a knockout on Smeargle when it wakes up, then it's going to be a really uphill struggle for Enosh just to win it with Celesteela. So he needs a lot to come out of this.
This game is going right down to the wire. Celesteela protecting this turn. Smeargle with the Endeavor, targeting that Araquanid, bringing it down to 1 HP. And unfortunately, it does not wake up. So provided Celesteela is able to connect. Actually, wait, no, that doesn't even matter because of that Leech Seed.
Leech Seed
will
will win
take
it.
that 1 HP back from that Araquanid, give it to Celesteela, and give Enosh the win. So we will be moving on to Game 3 here in Dallas.
Yeah, Endeavor's one way to deal with the healing effect of an Papa Berry. Of course, it does get 50% of its health back. Doesn't matter though, if Smeargle's got it asleep, has Endeavor, and is clinging on with a Focus Sash, bring it down to 1 health, and Leech Seed will round it out. So Enosh, little bit rocky at the start, I think. We definitely saw Carson get some good turns off. We saw Enosh get some good turns off. And then as we move forward into the back end of the game, Enosh just picked up a little bit more on the misplays that Carson made. Punishing him using his own team, essentially, is what I really enjoyed. And Game 3 looks like it's going to be an absolute thriller.
Yeah, both Enosh and Carson really need to be on, really need to bring their A game. I mean, as you can see, these trainers are just putting so much thought into every single move they're making. Even just the smallest slip up can really make a difference and allow their opponent to edge ahead. So moving forward into this game, you know, it's time to focus. It's time to take a little bit of a breath, maybe focus on the basics, focus on what you know and what you need for your win conditions, and then just hope for the best. For those of you just tuning in, once again, this is Enosh Shachar versus Carson Confer, and Enosh is running Trevenant, Smeargle, Celesteela, Crocodile, Tapu Fini, and Marowak versus Carson's team of Marowak, Porygon 2, or excuse me, that is Porygon 2, Araquanid, Tapu Koko, Kartana, and Crocodile.
I'd be interested to see the one thing, I don't know if it's so vital, but it would be definitely curious to see, is the Trevenant come out of Enosh.
I don't
think it's
know.
so useful this game, especially with the way Carson's been playing. But if Enosh has something that he likes about it, really wants to throw a spanner in the works, I mean, it does have access to strong grass type moves, and we've seen the amount of damage Araquanid has been doing from Carson's side of the field, so that might be one of the answers to it. Of course, Carson's team got a few answers to Trevenant, Marowak being a really, really big one there, Crocodile also being a big one, but I think, you know, if he can bring it in, keep it safe, and deal with Araquanid that way, that's an option. Might be why he's kept it hidden until Game 3.
Yes, you know, I think if Enosh were to bring that Trevenant, I don't think we'll be seeing Smeargle this game because they sort of form the same function on the field. You know, that Smeargle being used to endeavor that Araquanid to sort of stop it from raining terror on the battlefield with that water bubble ability. Carson leading this game with Tapu Koko and Crocodile. Enosh bringing both the Trevenant and the Smeargle. So I guess we both sort of got what we wanted there.
Yeah, Trevenant here is actually in a decent position, of course. It's going to be able to put pressure down on Crocodile on the condition that it can stay safe from Crocodile. Now, there's one very easy way to keep it safe. You've got the fake out from Smeargle, you've got the follow me from Smeargle, so it looks like Enosh putting a lot of eggs in the Trevenant tree. It's not where eggs grow, but that's where they're staying for this match. And I think he's going to have to work this pair. These were the two changes he made to his team. He obviously made the changes for a reason. So he knows that there's something they can do, and it's up to Carson to either know or very, very quickly figure out what they're up to in this match.
Definitely. We did see the fake out from Smeargle in that last game, so most likely we'll be seeing it again. We see Carson switch out the Crocodile, sending in the Araquanid in its place. Smeargle with the fake out into the Araquanid. Tapu Koko going for a Dazzling Gleam, looking to break Smeargle's focus sash, deal a little bit of damage to that Trevenant as well, but Trevenant completely unfazed, gets a Trick Room set up.
No, that's really nice. Of course, Trevenant now able to put big pressure down on the Araquanid. Smeargle's support options a little bit limited. Usually, Smeargle has the option to function very well under Trick Room. Some people running it with minimum speed training involved, so it's able to put pressure down, but of course, Carson with that electric terrain means he's not going to get put to sleep by the Spore that we've seen. Of course, Araquanid coming in was nice. It would have been nice if he'd faked out the Tapu Koko, of course, and taken no damage. But on the flip side, it means his Endeavor is going to be doing a lot of work. So he may be able to just take one knockout and then Endeavor something else for an easier knockout the turn after.
Smeargle switching out, saving that Endeavor for later. Celesteela taking the field in its place. Tapu Koko leaving the field as well. And Porygon 2 showing up on Carson's side of the field, activating its download ability, but unfortunately getting that attack boost. Liquidation from that Araquanid into the Celesteela brings it down to just below half health, and Woodhammer from that Trevenant unfortunately not targeting the Araquanid, instead targeting that Porygon 2.
No, I think fantastic play from Carson there. It looks on paper very obvious. Trick Room is up. You've got your Araquanid in the way of the Woodhammer. So it looks like, oh yeah, I'm just going to protect Araquanid and then go for it. So Enosh makes that read, but Carson actually just getting a massive amount of damage down with the liquidation on Celesteela. So I think Carson got a little more than he could have in that turn. Definitely capitalized on a smart prediction.
Lunge from the Araquanid into the Trevenant, lowers its attack. Woodhammer from Trevenant into the Araquanid in return, but thanks to that attack drop, it's just not going to deal enough damage. Thunderbolt from that Porygon into the protecting Celesteela.
No, I think what's really interesting here as well is Carson's Araquanid actually underspeeds in Trick Room, so he must know what Trick Room's got going for it this year, and I really enjoy that that lunge comes out. Of course, Woodhammer wouldn't have got the knockout anyway, but just showing how little damage it does makes what looked like a really big threat, especially if Crocodile comes back in. I mean, it would get an Intimidate down, but could still be a threat. Makes it really not a non-starter in this match.
Trevenant using Protect this turn, not wanting to possibly have its attack dropped even further by that lunge. Araquanid attacking that Trevenant. We see Porygon 2 with the Thunderbolt into the Celesteela, and thanks to the help from the electric terrain, Celesteela is left with just a sliver of health. It targets that Araquanid with Leech Seed, but that was an absolutely incredible survival there from that Celesteela.
Clinging on with a singular point of health is just what Enosh needs. Of course, this match doesn't look to be going in his favor. Pokemon numbers equal, but although he got what he wanted at the beginning of the match, I feel Carson over the next few turns has just really soaked up that pressure and put even more back down on Enosh. So that Celesteela getting the Leech Seed down is going to be helpful, but Carson definitely has the option to just switch it out so it's not getting any recovery at all. Trevenant now caught with a lunge. It may be getting caught with another one. Not now, though.
Enosh with the second Protect in a row. Celesteela protecting as well. Araquanid attacking that Trevenant, and Porygon 2 attacking the no, actually, Porygon 2 targeted that Trevenant.
Yeah, it looks like that's something it really wants to get rid of. Maybe just assumed the Celesteela Protect. Once you've got a Leech Seed up, it usually follows the turn after that you just protect it, so you've got recovery for the next turn where you go with it. Very lucky from Enosh to get the double Protect there. Gives a little more time, and actually, it looks like he wanted his own Trick Room to expire, because now he's able to move before the Trevenant. So very nice play from Enosh. He realized what he did wrong at the beginning of the game, didn't realize perhaps that Araquanid would underspeed and therefore move first in Trick Room. And I think Enosh just now isn't the time he needs to come back. Now Trick Room is over. He just needs to make sure Carson doesn't set it back up, because Carson was pretty enjoying playing in Trick Room.
Definitely, and that Porygon 2 will certainly be able to set up Trick Room if that's what Carson decides he needs to do this turn. Unless Trevenant has like a hidden trick somewhere, maybe a hidden taunt, it looks like that Porygon 2 is going to be able to move successfully thanks to all of that bulk that the Eviolite item brings to it. You know, it really is just this unstoppable force in this metagame right now, and you need to have an answer to Trick Room, or otherwise you're just going to be forced to deal with whatever it decides to do. We see that heavy slam from Celesteela into the Araquanid, just missing the knockout, gets a critical hit, activates that Ayapapa berry. So Araquanid going right back up in terms of its health. Porygon 2 not going for a Trick Room this turn, instead Thunderbolt into the Celesteela for the knockout. Trevenant is left on the field using that Wood Hammer to target that Araquanid. Even with a little bit of damage, it just wasn't enough. It needed that heavy slam to either knock out or somehow not activate that berry.
No, that's very nice. Getting that Papa Berry on both sides in this one turn, obviously on the Araquanid and the Trevenant, showing that Trevenant can do something. Does get caught by the lunge though, so now even it missed the knockout last turn, it's going to be probably missing it again this turn, and it just becomes exceptionally frustrating for Enosh to play against that. He does know the tricks of his own team, of course, but it looks like he's being caught a little bit short by them. Carson just very smart in every play he makes, every read, every adaptation. I think he's just really adapted to this game beautifully as we move through this set. So I think Enosh has a lot to do, but with Trevenant at exceptionally low health, Smeargle at exceptionally low health, he's definitely got an uphill struggle. Considering Porygon 2 is at full health and seems to be putting down a lot of pressure even without Trick Room.
Yeah, we do know Smeargle does have Endeavor, which this would certainly be a great opportunity to use it on that Porygon 2. I think this match all sort of hinges on what Pokemon Enosh has brought as his final Pokemon. If it's a Pokemon that's able to deal a massive amount of damage very quickly, we might see Enosh sort of spin this around. We do see Trevenant with that substitute. We see Araquanid targeting the Smeargle with the liquidation for the knockout. So it's all going to come down to whatever Pokemon takes the field next.
Yeah, that's going to be really big, and of course setting the substitute up buys Enosh a little bit of time. We do know that Trevenant has the Harvest ability, so it may be trying to buy time, looking at how low its health is, maybe trying to get another activation of the Papa Berry in there and really swing it back in his favor. Unfortunately, 2v4, it's going to need to get a lot of very successful harvests off, and this Marowak's going to have a tough time against this Porygon, most certainly.
Ice Beam into the Trevenant, trying to break that substitute. Will it be enough? It's super effective. It gets the critical hit, and the substitute fades. Marowak with the Shadow Bone targeting that Araquanid, trying to finally knock it out. Unfortunately, it is knocked out. Trevenant using its own Trick Room this turn to set up the speed a little bit more in Enosh's favor.
Yeah, that's something that he needs to come back, of course, getting the knockout very, very nice there. But the main problem he has now is he's only got these last two remaining. He does have decent pressure on the Crocodile if he can maybe score a critical hit on Wood Hammer to ignore those drops from Lunge, to ignore this drop from Intimidate. So he's really fishing for the win here, but Marowak's in a really bad position, and I don't think that was the Pokemon he needed as his fourth. It's not going to be able to do much at all to Crocodile. It's not going to be able to do much at all to Porygon, of course, limited to likely Flare Blitz, which is going to slowly whittle himself down.
Yeah, and it certainly didn't appreciate the Intimidate from that Crocodile either. I think if Enosh is going to turn this game around, he's going to need a little bit of luck in the form of critical hits, and maybe a little bit of luck just in terms of being able to play, maybe hoping that Carson misplays. We see the Trevenant and the Crocodile protect this turn. Marowak using Sword Stance to counter the Intimidate from that Crocodile, boosting its attack 2 stages, but Porygon 2 reversing the Trick Room.
Very smart play. Carson, knowing that probably Trevenant's going to protect, doesn't go for the Ice Beam to try and knock it out. That would have been really obvious, but he wouldn't have got Trick Room turned around. One of the best counters to Trick Room in the past has always been just reversing the Trick Room. Not the most efficient, pretty hard to do, but he found an opening to do it there, and he's forced Enosh into this horrendously awkward position, even though he got that really big boost on Marowak that might make it a big enough threat.
All right, we see a Groundium Z move on that Crocodile, so I think I know which Pokemon's about to be targeted.
Yeah, there's a really big tectonic rage coming out here. Carson keeping that one in the pocket. He hasn't been able to use it at all in these games, and even though Marowak has protected, he may be able to get a knockout through it. Whatever it does, it's going to be taking a significant amount of damage. Not a knockout, but a good 40%. And through a protect, that's really important.
Yeah, Porygon 2 with the Ice Beam into the Trevenant. Unfortunately, it failed the attempt at protecting twice in a row. So it is just this lone Marowak against the world. Very well played by Enosh and Carson, but unless that Marowak is going to do something that surprises us all, it looks like Carson is pretty secure in his win, using a crunch from that Crocodile for the knockout onto Marowak.
Yeah.
Very well played to both these trainers.
Yeah, that Marowak might have stood a chance, of course. If the Trick Room had stayed up for Enosh, then he would have been able to capitalize the following turn, but beautiful play from Carson to reverse the Trick Room. And so while he Swords Danced, he wasn't able to capitalize on it because the Crocodile was then moving first, always had that pressure down, and we saw him finally reveal Tectonic Rage. Didn't really matter, it was just nice to show it off, I think. But the pressure of the crunch going before it basically means that Marowak wasn't able to do anything, so reversing that Trick Room in Game 3, the most essential turn, I think, for Carson.
Yeah, I'm sure Carson was really sort of sweating in his seat a little bit trying to make that play. You always have to wonder, if you know your opponent has Trick Room and they know you have Trick Room and you know they might reverse the Trick Room, maybe I should Trick Room again to sort of reverse the Trick Room.
Definitely mind games
There's
to be
a
played.
lot of mind games in that game, and I'm really excited to hear Carson's thought process about, why he made some of those plays.
Especially using Enosh's team. So,
Definitely.
A very interesting mind game that comes down between the two of them, where he knows how Enosh played the team, Enosh knows how he played the team, but does Enosh know how Carson played the team? There's a lot of playing the team there, but I definitely think it's a good blend of how it all goes. So we're going to drag him up, or we're going to invite him up, rather, for a player interview in a couple of minutes. And we're going to be able to really dive in and see what his thought process was.
Yeah, please stay tuned, everybody.
Welcome back to Dallas Regionals. I am joined by our round 5 winner, Carson Confer. How was that game for you, just quickly? It was full best of 3. Draining, I'd imagine?
Yeah, playing against Enosh, I didn't expect to play him, and I was pretty scared because he has an amazing reputation, and I've talked to him before and told him my team because he was helping me with it, so I was very scared to play him.
Oh, we looked pretty confident in it. You really did well. We were talking a little bit in here before the game, and you were saying that your team that you brought today is pretty much inspired by his. So what made you look at that team and kind of build around and make your own changes to it?
Well, my friends started using it, and I was looking at it, and the part that I really liked was Porygon 2 Araquanid, and it seemed really strong, and unprepared teams, it can just sweep right through them. So I really liked that part, so I just wanted to use that team.
So that was the kind of core, you saw that was a strong pairing and you wanted to use it for yourself.
Yeah.
So how was it, obviously Enosh knows pretty intimately the details of that team. How was it playing against the kind of creator of that team?
It was kind of funny because I changed little things on almost every Pokemon, so I wasn't sure if he would know what I changed or not because I was talking to him before and I wasn't sure if I'd told him.
So you couldn't remember what you told him, what you hadn't told him about your changes. Did it affect, in the game, did it affect your play style at all? Were you kind of psyched out, or were you just comfortable in knowing that the changes you've made were the right changes and would be able to win out?
Well, I felt like with him, I could make a few more predictions because he's a very strong player. So the changes didn't come into play a whole lot, but just how I was able to play versus him, knowing how good he is.
Yeah, it's a tough match against Enosh, but the way you played against predictions and kind of reading each other was really, really exciting. Obviously, we have to address one thing. You were the Seniors World Champion last year. Congratulations on that. I haven't said that before. This year's obviously your first year in Masters, and you're playing in a brand new format now. So how are both of those things for you?
I think I like Masters a little more than Seniors. It's a lot tougher, but it's also a lot more fun if you can do well. It feels more rewarding. And as of the new format, I like it better than the last format because after Worlds, I was kind of trying to replicate the success instead of making new ways to succeed. And so having a fresh start was nice for me.
So it's a nice fresh start. You're able to evolve with a brand new game as well, rather than in the game you've already succeeded in. Well, I wish you all the best for the rest of the tournament. I imagine we'll be seeing some success from you this year in this new format. You seem to have adapted to Masters absolutely fantastically. Thank you for joining me. We'll let you get prepared for round 6, which you're going into undefeated. So no pressure to keep that one up, Carson.
Thanks.
We'll be back after a short break. We'll have to wait for our pairings to come in. Then we'll pick another really exciting match for you here at Dallas.